It's where the boat came to rest. Then the male DNA spread out from Sumer, which is, relatively close by. Again, my wife ran into one of my students one time, and I made some shocking statements, to a class, and he said, "I'm going to see it." And he looked it up, and sure enough found out that it was true. Look up mitochondrial DNA. Look up Adam. It's in the records, folks. And by the way, the shocking statement I made then, I'm going to make right now. The public schools do, in fact, allow prayer rooms. You might not know it. Yes, prayer rooms for Islamic students. This goes on in Michigan, in New York, and in California, and a few other places. So how many of you have heard that outside the class? Any of you? Well, one, maybe two of you have heard that, yeah.
The school doesn't patrolling Muslim. Muslim students get to go out of class during their prayer times.
Yeah. But it's not allowed for any other religion, especially disallowed for Christians. But it is allowed for Muslim students. Anyway, this fellow thought he'd look it up, and he met my wife in the supermarket. He said, "Oh yeah," I said, "we didn't know if we believed or not. We looked it up, and hey, I looked it up also. I didn't just believe it. It is so. But most of you have never even heard of it." All right, anyway, I'll be talking more about that, obviously, later. Okay. Almost every Bible story you find is corroborated. And one I want to mention in particular is the story of the Tower of Babel, where all of a sudden languages were confused and everybody spoke a different language. All right, I've already mentioned some unique things about your Sumerian language. When you're reading, and I worked like for 27 years, and one thing I did was calibration, and I'd put down the symbol. How do you pronounce that? Pounds. Hey. Now, only an elementary school student will look at this and know, hey, that doesn't look like pounds to me. But after a while, you train yourself. It comes from another language, a Latin word, libre. 10 libre, or 10 pounds, LBS, pounds. The entire Sumerian tongue, folk, was written like this. It's like they woke up one day and they could still read, but the pronunciations no way resembled what they were writing. Their whole language, and yes, the story of the confusion of language is found in at least 2 Sumerian documents. One of them about the war between the Uruk and the Lord of Arada. And then there's another one about the king in Merkar wanting to go back to the time when we all spoke one language because he was old enough to remember the time. King in Merkar. So these stories, the story of Adam and Eve, are found throughout a lot of ancient societies, ancient mythologies. Again, the flood story, folks, it's all over the ancient literature, all over the place. Okay. We're going to leave that now and get into some more, serious history. I'm not going to promise I'll leave this for good because when we could visit China, we're going to come back to this again. They start off their histories the same way. India especially starts off with the Vedas. All right. The Sumerians tended to live in cities. Their cities were located on the banks of rivers. Some of their main cities were Ur. Oh yeah, Ur, the city I just mentioned, was destroyed in what looks like, quote, a nuclear blast. Hey, what kind? I want you to keep in mind, the only thing that grows in that region is clay. How do you set clay on fire to where it gets hot enough to melt human bodies? If you don't know the answer, don't feel badly. I don't know it either. Well, I do have an answer, yes. You know what that means? How do you? Clay doesn't burn, particularly wet clay. It doesn't burn. Hey, you might say, hey, there are no forests in Mesopotamia. How do you get it hot enough to melt human bodies? To even put gods to flight, running away from them. book, there's no rash, but nevertheless, this poem, I mean, I just read you one of the more famous poems from the ancient world, and it gives some evidence that there was nuclear wars that went on at the time that may have contributed to the destruction of those civilizations. All right, but anyway, they lived in cities. We know their cities. Oh yeah, I knew it. Ur. Does anyone know what other significance the city of Ur has? That's it? Oh, go ahead.
It's in the Bible.
It's in the Bible. Who lived there?
No.
Somebody knows. Abraham. Yeah, Abraham. It was the city of Abraham. Now, Zachariah Sitchin, a Jewish scholar, says that Abraham happened to get out of the city of Ur. I mean, if you read the story of Abraham, he was told to get out of Ur, get out of Ur. And he got out just before the destruction occurred. And again, if you read further story of Abraham, 2 cities were destroyed in what looks like a nuclear holocaust. Those cities were named Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom, more than you go 4,000 miles east and you run into Mohenjo-Daro in India. Were they all part of the same destruction? I have to admit, I don't know. Part of the same war, perhaps. But yes, anyway, you have Ur and Ummah, Kish, and the big one, the most important of all, Babylon, which we will talk more about in a little bit. Your book mentions how the people of Mesopotamia produced wool, pottery, metalwork, copper. They imported copper, tin, lumber. They didn't have that in their area, so they had to import it. They had trade. Folk, you can't imagine how important trade is. I mean, right here in my wrist, I'm wearing a little cheap digital watch. The materials to make this watch are not found in any one place on earth. You have to get them together in one factory, and the factory has to buy the materials from this place, that place, another place. Trade. To make an automobile, there's no one place on earth that has everything you need to put one together. You have to, I mean, you know, I put together a lot of electronic toys. You have to procure the parts. And you have to start putting together electronic gadgetry, procuring the parts can become a pain, because 80% of the parts that were once made are no longer made. I had a 38-year-old radio that I put together back in 1976, going to blink on me, and I had to put it on the shelf. I might someday get it down. It won't receive anymore. Sad. Why can't I fix it? I've had the manual. The parts are no longer available. The company that made it is out of business. Parts can't be had. We rented this in Lockheed. I mean, you know, old piece of equipment. We've had this for 20 years, and it's not working now. We shipped a call back to the factory. Oh, we don't service that anymore. If the factory still exists, and if it does, oh, no, you have to buy a new part now. We don't service that anymore. So we have to buy new equipment. Anyway, now, who is the earliest figure in history that we consider to be historical? At one time, we said it was Hammurabi, but now they're finally ready to admit that the earliest historical figure is Sargon, who lived before Hammurabi. And really, some historians now go all the way back, and a lot of historians, including my major professor at the University of Tennessee, says he has a document that was written just 2 generations after Gilgamesh lived, that possibly written by a man who personally knew Gilgamesh, but not many other historians agree with that conclusion. But we're going to say Sargon. What these people did now, including Sargon, they were empire builders. They would conquer other city-states, and if they were powerful enough, they would be able to become ruler. Now, conquest was looked on as being a virtue. Now today we look on conquest as being something evil, but it's only been about 115, 120 years ago, folks, that conquest started to be looked on as being imperialist and naughty and evil. But the people we consider great in olden times were conquerors. Alexander the Great. Well, anyway, Sargon was a conqueror. He started off really small, and his capital city was a city called Agad. Don't worry about that name. But he conquered the city of Kish and then wound up conquering all of Sumer and Akkad, Akkad being the northern part of Mesopotamia and Sumer being the southern part, and united all of Sumer. Now, why did they conquer? They had several reasons. One of them was they felt their civilization was better than others, and it was their duty to go out and conquer other civilizations. Another reason they conquered was if you didn't conquer them, they'd conquer you. And another reason, and most of us can't imagine this except a few that have experienced it. Uncivilized people would often invade the civilized and steal away their children from the bedrooms at night and carry them home and make sex slaves, or make slaves out of them. This was a very common practice in the ancient world. But it's like if you conquer these people, then you had ready access to find out, where they would not be able to behave this way. It was again looked on as being a virtue. The great men were the ones who conquered, civilized their neighbors, brought the gifts of civilization to their neighbors, and engaged in conquest. All right. I got busy and just I hate the class time is just about over. I want to say this, so before you leave, there'll always be one or two of you who'll decide, I don't want to take this class, I'm never coming back. If you do that, do yourself a big favor. Go to the registrar or go online and officially drop the course. Number one, you'll make room for someone else because just overnight someone did drop the course and someone else came in and took the place. There are persons on the wait list. And number two, if you don't drop and keep your name on the roll, at the end of the semester, all I can do is issue you an F for a grade. Are we clear on that? Drop the course if you don't want to make it back. If you can't make it back. And that's true whether you did the course now or later. All right, before we leave, are there any questions? Yes?
Is this always in this classroom for the rest of the semester?
As far as I know, unless they tell us otherwise, yeah, this classroom is the assigned classroom, and it's available for me now. And oh yeah, if you, I'm teaching the same class at 2:30. If for some reason you can't get up early enough to make it at 10 o'clock, you have a document with them, come at 2:30 and let me know you're there, and I'll count you present. Now, I'm not supposed to say that. I'll count you present. Yes. Your homework is start reading the chapters and studying for the next test and think about a paper topic. And any sentence in a book, folk, can be expanded into a 1,000-word paper. Any paragraph at least can be. And almost any sentence I utter can be expanded into a 1,000-word paper. So you shouldn't have any trouble finding topic yet.
So is it a significant person or is it significant?
It can be a person. I've always liked reading art. It can be a person. It can be an event. I had one student who was in the Army who just loved military and wrote about the Battle of Leuctra, which was a battle where an undefeated Spartan team got defeated. And I'll be talking about that later, but the Spartans got whipped in a battle by a smaller army than theirs. Yeah, but it can be an event. It can be a philosophy, a religion. I like reading about philosophies. And it can be an era, and yeah, one topic that I'm very interested in, evolution. I want to write about that. I want to say this about evolution. It's scientifically backed by folk. And even the debates that occurred in February between Ken Ham and Bill Nye, they agreed not to discuss evolution because Mr. Nye knows evolution cannot be debated. It's strictly an article of faith. All right. Anything else?
What kind of world history book?
What kind of what?
World history book did you say?
Oh, the world history book is as long as the author's name are Dwight and Spielberg.